Nice.
Perfect. Hello, everybody again. Those of you who are out there, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance before we get into our regular agenda. So we'll start with that. I pledge allegiance
To
to
the
the
flag
flag of the
of the
United States of America and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty
and justice
and
for all.
justice for all. Thank you, everyone. As in our earlier video meetings, we will not be having a hearing in privilege of the floor, but if anybody does want to address the board, they're encouraged to send an email to the Board of Education, and we will deal with it in that manner. Next on our agenda, I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent for her comments.
Thank you, David. So folks, I just want to make you aware of a couple of things. If you heard the governor's press briefing today, he is coupling, at least in his comments, the reopening of business with the reopening of schools. Part of any reopening of business or schools or anything else in New York State, as you know, will hinge very much on how prepared we could be for that. And when I say prepared, I mean in terms of everything from transporting students safely to what we do once we get them here. If we're supposed to keep people socially distant, you would know in a kindergarten classroom, that would be pretty tough to do. So the Capital Region BOCES group has started working on a protocol based on CDC guidance, the New York State Education Department guidance, and the New York State Health Department guidance to think about what would that actually mean if we were going to reopen school and what kinds of things would we need to have in place. Drew and I had already met this morning to begin a discussion about that prior to my teleconference, and as it turns out, prior to his this afternoon. So we have lots of good minds working on these things. Part of the challenge is, since guidance keeps changing, we don't really know at the point at which we'd open school, where we will be as a state, where we will be as a nation. So although I'm glad we are thinking about these things, I think we are not quite ready to make hard and fast decisions. I'd also like to share with you that Karen and the administrative team have worked very hard on our grading protocols. So at this point, we have shared information with parents and families about third quarter or third trimester if you're an elementary student. The team has been working on Q4 guidance, which we have sent out to secondary folks. We have a process by which we gather questions and answers, provide answers about the guidance we provide. And once we have fine-tuned that, we will be able to send that out to families. Even in the event that we return this year, which I, as you know, being relentlessly optimistic, am still hopeful for some amount of time in school. But even if we were to return this year, the guidance that we put out for Q4 will be the guidance that we use. Even if we were to return, it would not be in enough time to go back to traditional grading, and I'm not really sure we'd even be holding traditional classes. So you will see that information. As you know, we share with you what we share with everyone else. So we're working on that piece also. And finally, I would want you to know that Drew and I continue to work every day around questions about our budget, both our current budget and next year's budget. The governor's first look back at state aid will actually take place at the end of this month, at the end of April, because as you know, the fiscal year in the state begins April 1st. On Sunday, the governor had said he might take as much as 50% of schools' state aid back, depending upon the how the state was doing economically. By Monday, he was talking 20%. We don't know if that means 20% all at once. That seems unlikely. If he means over the quarterly payments you receive, that would seem more likely. But it is certainly going to be a moving target. Drew and I continue to believe that we have positioned the district well for the coming year, the best that we can, given the information we have. And he will talk to you a bit more about that when he reviews the third quarter projection. But I want you to know that all of those things are near and dear to our hearts, starting with our kids and our instruction, but also the safety of staff and the safety of students. And then, of course, how we provide a program for students going forward. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Susan. I have a quick question, and if anyone else does, please feel free to jump in. If anyone on the board has any suggestions or concerns or areas that they hope we can address, you're fine if we send them in to you. Is part of the concerns of opening the schools and things.
Absolutely. You should feel free to communicate any of those things to me. And I would remind you that when we get to the point where we're talking about adopting a budget, what you're really adopting is a spending cap. So as I always say to you, there is room under that cap if we have to make decisions going forward. That's the beauty of that. It's a spending cap for us. We can't spend more than we said we would spend, but we can certainly work within that number.
Right.
But yes, anything that is on your mind, please reach out.
Yes, on my mind is that we have one mental health professional for every 5 kids in the school when they come back, but that's a highly impossible task to accommodate. But
Well, and we would need one for every 5 students and probably one for every 20 or 25 staff members, because this is, as you know, a challenge for them also.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of adding them into the total classroom size. Okay, does anybody have anything they wanted to bring forward to superintendent, or we'll move on? Okay. So we'll move on to the Board of Cooperative Education Services, the BOCES administrative budget, and the board vacancies. I believe that we are voting on them today, right, Susan?
That is correct. Yes, please.
Okay. So can I believe I need to get a motion for we have a motion for the adoption of the budget coming up. I'm going to need a motion for us to vote on our candidates or select our candidates.
Actually need folks to move both A and B under
Yes.
number 5.
Yep.
I'll move that we vote yes on adopting the administrative budget, and that we also vote cast one vote for each of the 4 candidates.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. Was that you, Kim?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this? No. Okay. I was a little disappointed to see that the backgrounds of the candidates were not as what's the word I'm looking for? Varied as I would have loved to have seen. But I do know one of the candidates. I worked with her, and I think she'll do a great job. So I was glad to see that she was on the piece.
At least 3 of the 4 are returning candidates who are already sitting on the board.
Yep. Any questions about the budget or the candidates? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone oppose? Anyone abstain? Good. So moved. It's always nice to get our BOCES piece out of the way, right? Number 6 is our budget appropriation. Can I get a motion?
A motion to accept the budget appropriation status and revenue status reports fund balance third quarter projection for 2019 to 2020 fiscal year.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Okay, thank you. Drew, would you like to say anything about this before we?
Sure, Dave, I'd love to.
Thank you.
Hear him?
We do.
Okay. Right now, what you see in front of you is about a $3.4 million projected surplus for 2019, 2020. You know that we're using about $3.8 million to balance the 2020-21 budget. So the objective is to get to at least $3.8 million of surplus by the end of the fourth quarter. And hopefully, because of the pending projections of taking back state aid, that we get over $4 million. I believe that we're going to get there and that we're not going to open school at least until May 18th. So we'll continue to save money on utilities, fuel, supplies, substitutes. I believe that we will be able to get our unrestricted fund balance close to the 4% of next year's budget. Right now, we're projecting 3%. But things are looking, unfortunately, they're looking good for the wrong reasons because we're not in school. But we will be saving money and continue to save money because we're staying out longer than I thought. When I first did this, we'll come back April 1st, I think. But I wanted to close it with one quick brief bullet for you because Susan and I and some of the board went through this in 2010. So I wanted to give you some real quick bullet numbers. Our fund balance, we're using 7.5% next year to balance the budget. Over the last 10 years, we've used between 6.4 and 11%. So what we're using next year is not extraordinary. And that's why Susan was alluding to, we're in position to absorb some bad stuff next year. Not catastrophic, but some bad stuff because of prudent budgeting and fiscal conservative operation. Our spending has been averaging 2% over 10 years. That's what our spending is for the 2021 budget. Our tax levy has averaged 55% of our budget over 10 years. That's what it is next year. So there's a lot of synergy in what we've been doing for 10 years, why Susan says that we are in a position to withstand some bad stuff next year. In 2010-11, the governor took back $2.8 million of state aid from the district, or 6% of the budget, and we made it through that. President Obama did kick in $2.5 million called error money during that time, which helped. I think that's what Governor Cuomo is posturing for, some federal money to come in and help prop up these deficits in state aid. I just wanted to give you that kind of bullet numbers as you look at all this extraordinary detail. Any questions?
Thank you, Drew. I know for me, I want to say thank you too for the job you've and everybody else has done to put us in this. I don't know if everybody's been reading the paper about the articles that have been trickling down from different schools, but almost every superintendent or business manager has been stating how catastrophic this is going to be for their school in the upcoming year and the kinds of layoffs that they are projecting to have to do, and for us to be in a position that with reasonable cuts we can get through is a fantastic thing and a testament to your hard work on this stuff.
Thank you. Agreed.
Is there any questions we have for Drew here? That was from the whole board, by the way, Drew. I know every one of us feel the same way about that. So,
Thank you.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone oppose?
Aye.
Okay. Anyone oppose? Anyone abstain? Wonderful. I'm gonna open it up next for other business. If anyone would like to bring up another piece of business.
I'd just like to share with you that Senator Tonko has reached out to districts because one of the challenges we're having is that we can't guarantee that every student has access to the internet. And of course, we're doing a good chunk of our instruction in that way. He is working to help folks understand that New York State is not totally wired, that there are places that don't have access, for example, West Glenville. And so I would want you to know that in addition to loaning Chromebooks, we have also ordered hotspots, chargers, and bought subscriptions for some of our students to be able to access the internet, whatever it may be where they're at. And I am giving all of that information to Senator Tonko this afternoon so that he can use it in part of his discussion next week about the additional assistance that New York needs. Thanks, Dave.
You're muted, Dave. Yeah.
You said that I'm glad that Paul is
There you
doing
go.
that and not only worried about the racehorses during this period of time. So I'm very glad that somebody's looking into that because it's a serious problem that some kids can't get on the internet and we don't want them to be falling behind. I'm really glad to hear that, Susan. That's really good that the things that you're doing and the things that he's doing to try to correct this is a great thing.
Hey, Susan or Karen, I have one question. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a plan for the fourth quarter grading? I know you talked about it a minute ago. For students that receive an incomplete grade in the fourth quarter, I know one of the math teachers yesterday during their class mentioned to his students that if you get an incomplete in the fourth quarter, you will then be required to take the regions, which I had to reassure people that, well, they're canceled, so you won't be taking the regions. But it kind of sent a little shockwave through a 11th grade algebra class yesterday, and parents were calling, and my son was going to jump off the roof. So, but the bigger question I got asked from parents was, with this whole new way we're grading now, is what happens for fourth quarter if they do get an incomplete? What do we do from there?
Karen, feel free to go ahead.
Say it again, Susan, I'm sorry.
I said, feel free to take that if you'd like.
Thank you. So Hal, there's actually a series of options for folks. When Board of Regents put out their guidance, the guidance is that students need to pass the course in order to be exempt from the regents. That exemption will be applied in June as long as the student is enrolled in a class or showing an intention to have taken the regents in June. An intention, they gave 3 examples, was that they had reached out to someone and said, I intend to take this in June. If they were in an AIS class, or that they were involved in some sort of tutoring or some kind of continued education around that. And so that exemption applies in June. And if a child does not pass in June and they do participate in some type of summer school, whether that be online, in person, a blended approach, that exemption would continue into August. Right now, the Board of Regents guidance ends in August. Depending on how long the school closure lasts, I would expect to see updated guidance if needed, or we know that exemption is applicable to students with the intention in June and August of this year. Does that answer the question?
It does. It does, yeah. So basically, if they get an incomplete as of June, then they're going to have to online summer school to potentially, so it's going to happen in August.
And it's not a have to at summer school. There's a whole bunch of conversation happening right now about what summer school could, would, should look like? And you know, some kids who get an incomplete in the fourth quarter might say, I've got this, I'm ready for August, and then that August Regents exam is absolutely available for them. We will do the best we can to invite some students to some kind of something around summer school. We are in conversation with Cap Region BOCES and other districts about what that will look like based on what the governor allows us to do.
Okay, thank you.
I just, and Hal, I've done the same thing here. And this was your son getting nervous, so it's a little different. But I've been getting some similar calls about different schools, and I've been sort of telling them the same way I do during the school year. Your first reach has got to be back to a teacher. The second one should be to your principal. And if you're not getting satisfaction at that point of a clear answer, to go ahead and contact Susan or Karen, so that there's so many, I think you said this, Hal, or Dave did. There's so many things being said around town or between kids or misunderstandings that it's best coming out of Susan and Karen's mouth or the principals. I heard the strangest one the other day. That's not even, not even worth mentioning, about how we're going to be separating kids in the school and based upon who did their homework and who didn't. And so I just said, listen, if you've been hearing that, please just call Karen or Susan, or it just happened to be Lincoln, call John, because I think they can they can dispel that rumor or whatever you're hearing.
And I can honestly say too that the teachers are doing a great job about getting back. I've emailed them numerous times, and they, the email comes right back. Your child should be doing this. This is what your child has missed.
Yeah.
This is how we can make it up. Are working with students. I mean, I've even had a Google Meet just to be able to talk about a new action plan for one of my children who has a 504. And, they are reaching out. If you just reach out to your teacher by email, they're going to respond.
Yeah, and they're working with, like, like our administration is. They're working with whatever information Susan and Karen can pass along to them, and sometimes Susan and Karen don't have all the information yet from state ed. I think with that, we will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second.
I would just add for everyone to please stay healthy, safe, follow the rules until the rules are lifted. And we will meet again. Is it, could somebody jump the date at me here? I don't have it right in front of me. Our next meeting.
It'd be May 11th.
Thank you, Pam. So we will still be meeting this way on May 11th, since we're meeting this way at least until the 15th.
Yes, correct.
All right. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone,
Thank you,
for
Dave.
joining. Be
Thanks,
well.
guys.
Thank you.